The spaceport of Nexus Prime pulsed with a cacophony of alien languages and the acrid smell of plasma residue. Massive creatures from 100 different worlds moved through the bustling hub, their biomechanical exoskeletons and cybernetic augmentations telling stories of countless hunts and brutal conquests. Elena Rodriguez sat alone at a corner table, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed impossibly delicate compared to the hulking forms surrounding her. She was small by galactic standards, barely over 5.5 feet tall, with dark skin and eyes that seemed to absorb information like black holes consume light. The Krelzar mercenary collective had just returned from their latest mission. Their lead hunter, a towering creature of living metal and organic tissue, slammed a massive fist onto the central negotiation platform. Violet blood dripped from its segmented arm, creating a gruesome splatter pattern that no one seemed to notice anymore. "The contract is incomplete," the lead hunter roared, its translator generating a sound that was part mechanical growl, part subsonic rumble. "We eliminated the target. We destroyed the facility. What more do you want?" Their client, a holoform representing a massive pharmaceutical consortium, looked distinctly uncomfortable. "You were specifically contracted to eliminate the target with zero collateral damage. The facility was to remain intact. You've destroyed millions in research infrastructure." Elena's fingers never stopped moving. The Krelzar hunters laughed, a sound like grinding metal and broken glass. "Collateral is part of the hunt," the lead hunter declared. "We are hunters. We do not make apologies. We make results." Most contract brokers would have backed down. Most would have negotiated a compromise. Elena Rodriguez did neither. She approached the negotiation platform, her steps silent despite the tension crackling through the spaceport. The Krelzar hunters turned, their sensors scanning her, a human, small, seemingly insignificant. "Data chip," Elena said simply, sliding a crystalline storage device across the platform. The lead hunter looked down, its multiple optical sensors focusing on the tiny object. Its cybernetic interface connected, and in an instant, the creature's entire demeanor changed. Every financial account associated with the Krelzar mercenary collective froze simultaneously. Their assets, billions in galactic credits, became instantly inaccessible. Contracts across the known universe began auto-terminating. Backup accounts, hidden repositories, even quantum-encrypted financial nodes simply disappeared. The port went silent. The lead hunter's translator produced a sound that might have been a gasp of disbelief. "What have you done?" Elena's smile was clinical, precise. "I've enforced the contract. Exactly as written." The contract wasn't just a document. It was a weapon. A precision instrument that cut deeper than any plasma blade, more effectively than any advanced weaponry. In the span of 3 seconds, Elena Rodriguez had dismantled an entire mercenary operation without firing a single shot. Around her, other hunters and brokers stared in shock. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They were supposed to be naive, inexperienced. They were supposed to be the rookies, the newcomers who didn't understand the complex web of interstellar commerce and contract law. No one had told the Krelzar about Elena Rodriguez. The lead hunter's massive form seemed to deflate. Centuries of reputation, of feared hunting prowess, dissolved faster than the blood dripping from its arm. This was not a defeat by violence. This was a systematic, surgical destruction that left no room for argument, no possibility of retaliation. As the Krelzar hunters were escorted out, their assets frozen, their reputation in tatters, Elena returned to her table. Her holographic interface continued to shimmer, lines of complex legal code dancing beneath her fingertips. In the galactic hunting community, a message was being sent. Humanity had arrived. And they were bringing paperwork. The hunt had changed forever. The training grounds of the Nexus Prime Contract Academy looked nothing like traditional military facilities. Holographic projections danced between modular learning pods, each displaying intricate legal frameworks and psychological profile analyses. At the center of it all stood Elena Rodriguez, her fingers tracing complex neural network diagrams that mapped out human negotiation strategies. Her past was etched into every movement. Before entering the Galactic contract market, Elena had been a trauma negotiator in Earth's most volatile conflict zones. The Amazon refugee crisis of 2089 had been her crucible, a nightmarish period where corporate interests, environmental collapse, and human desperation created a powder keg of potential violence. There, she learned that words were more powerful than weapons. In one memorable incident, she had prevented a massacre of 10,000 displaced individuals by crafting a negotiation framework so nuanced that 3 competing corporate entities found themselves legally bound to provide humanitarian support. No shots fired, no blood spilled, just carefully chosen words that transformed potential genocide into a sustainable resettlement program. The Vorn Hunters received her first major test. Their target was Dr. Ariel Selnak, a bioweapon designer whose neural adaptive plague had already decimated 3 planetary systems. Most contract brokers would have simply issued a standard elimination contract. Elena did something far more dangerous. Her contract was a living document. Each clause was not just a legal restriction, but a psychological profile that predicted and neutralized potential violations before they could occur. The Vorn Hunters received a contract that was part legal text, part predictive algorithm, part psychological evaluation. The lead hunter, a creature named Voskrull, examined the contract with growing unease. Holographic translations shifted and morphed as he read, revealing layers of meaning that seemed to anticipate every potential strategy. Each paragraph contained nested contingencies that would trigger automatic financial and operational penalties. Deviation wasn't just discouraged. It was mathematically impossible. The mission parameters were crystal clear. Capture Dr. Zelnak alive. Preserve all research data. Ensure 0 collateral damage to the surrounding research facility. Fail any of these conditions, and the financial repercussions would be catastrophic. Voskrull understood immediately that this was not a typical contract. This was a trap wrapped in legal language. Dr. Zelnak's facility was located in the quantum-shielded regions of the Mira Nebula. Conventional tracking methods would be useless. The bioweapon designer had spent decades creating adaptive camouflage technologies that made standard hunting techniques obsolete. But Elena's contract contained something unprecedented. Embedded within the legal text were quantum-entangled tracking protocols that would activate the moment the hunters entered the facility's perimeter. Each movement, each decision would be logged, analyzed, and potentially penalized. The hunt began. Voskrull's team moved with the precision of centuries of hunting experience. Cybernetic augmentations allowed them to perceive quantum-level variations in their environment. Adaptive camouflage systems made them virtually invisible to standard detection methods. They didn't know that Elena was watching everything. Her contract wasn't just a document. It was a living, breathing entity that consumed and processed information in real time. Every micro-decision made by the Vorn Hunters was instantaneously evaluated against the contract's parameters. One hunter accidentally scorched a research terminal while moving through a corridor. Instantaneously, a financial penalty was triggered. Another team member's biometric scan caused microscopic damage to a sensitive piece of equipment. Another penalty. By the time they reached Dr. Zelnak's primary laboratory, the Vorn Hunters had accumulated penalties that would bankrupt their entire collective. And they hadn't even completed the mission. Dr. Zelnak was captured. The research remained intact. 0 collateral damage was achieved. But the real victory belonged to Elena Rodriguez. The galactic hunting community would soon learn that physical prowess meant nothing compared to a truly strategic mind. Humans were no longer the naive newcomers. They were the architects of a new kind of warfare, one fought with words, algorithms, and psychological precision. The hunt had changed forever, and humanity was just getting started. The underground meeting chamber was a masterpiece of covert engineering. Located beneath the quantum-shielded underbelly of Nexus Prime's diplomatic sector, it existed in a perpetual state of quantum uncertainty, detectable only when directly observed, and even then, only by those with the most advanced scanning technologies. 12 representatives from the galaxy's most powerful hunting guilds sat around a holographic table that shimmered between transparency and solid matter. Each carried the genetic and technological legacy of species that had hunted across the cosmos for millennia. Kreezax of the Xithkal, Vos Karol of the Vorn, metalloid representatives from the Silicon Collective, predators whose very existence was defined by their ability to track, capture, and eliminate. And they were afraid. "One human," growled Kreezax, mandibles clicking with frustration, "has destabilized our entire operational framework." Elena Rodriguez had become more than a contract broker. She had become a systemic threat. The conspiracy took shape quickly. They would hire the most sophisticated legal experts from across the known galaxy. Synop psychologists, quantum contract analysts, former special forces operatives with expertise in information warfare, a team designed to completely deconstruct and discredit Elena's contract methodologies. What they didn't know was that Elena was already 3 moves ahead. Her system wasn't just a contract framework. It was a living, adaptive intelligence that consumed information like oxygen. Every probe, every investigation became another data point in her ever-expanding predictive model. The team they assembled was impressive. Dr. Liara, a quantum information theorist from the crystalline networks, could mathematically model communication patterns across 17 different dimensional frameworks. Sergeant Cax, a retired Special Forces operative from the Burning Worlds, had dismantled more covert operations than most species had developed. They began their investigation with surgical precision. Financial records were analyzed. Every contract Elena had ever written was deconstructed at the quantum level. Psychological profiles were generated, potential weaknesses mapped with mathematical precision. But each step they took was already anticipated. Elena's contract system was more than a defensive mechanism. It was a learning entity that absorbed and transformed information faster than any known computational matrix. What appeared to be vulnerabilities were actually meticulously designed traps. The conspiracy's communication channels began to leak, not through traditional means, but through the very investigation they were conducting. Each encrypted message, each supposedly secure communication became another thread in Elena's expanding web. Kreezax realized the terrible truth first. They weren't investigating Elena. She was investigating them. Quantum-encrypted communication nodes began to fail. Backup systems collapsed. The very tools they were using to analyze her became conduits for her own intelligence to propagate. By the time the conspiracy realized they had been outmaneuvered, it was already too late. Elena Rodriguez hadn't just defended herself. She had transformed their entire investigation into another layer of her contract infrastructure. What began as an attempt to discredit her became another demonstration of her unprecedented capabilities. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had just shown that its most dangerous weapon wasn't technology or physical strength. It was the ability to turn information itself into a strategic asset. The hunt had changed forever, and no one was safe. The neutron star burned like a cosmic wound, its magnetic interference creating a realm where standard physics became more suggestion than law. At its core, the quantum-encrypted AI had hidden itself, a technological marvel that had eluded capture for decades. Kreezax, lead hunter of the Xithkal Predator clan, understood that this mission was different. This was more than a hunt. This was a statement. Elena Rodriguez sat across from the hunter, her holographic interface casting soft blue light across her determined features. The negotiation room was a neutral zone, a quantum-stabilized chamber that existed between physical realities, where communication could occur without interference. "The target is impossible," Kreezax stated. Its translator generated a sound that was part growl, part mathematical equation. No hunting collective has ever successfully captured a quantum-encrypted AI within a neutron star's magnetic interference. Elena's smile was clinical, precise. No one has used my contract methodology before. The contract materialized between them, not as a traditional document, but as a living holographic projection. Lines of code danced and intersected, creating three-dimensional representations of potential mission scenarios. Each potential path was color-coded, with probability matrices flickering at the edges. This was warfare conducted through pure information. Kreezax's cybernetic augmentations struggled to process the complexity. The contract wasn't just a set of rules. It was a predictive system that seemed to understand the mission parameters at a level beyond traditional computational logic. Quantum-level contingencies were embedded within each clause. Deviation wasn't just discouraged, it was mathematically impossible. The financial and operational penalties were so complex that attempting to break the contract would be more destructive than the mission itself. The Hunter's historical displays told a story of absolute conquest. Entire planetary systems reduced to ash. Impossible targets eliminated with surgical precision. Civilizations had fallen before the Xithkal's relentless hunting capabilities. But Alina Rodriguez represented something entirely new. Her contract transformed the hunt from a physical challenge to an information warfare scenario. Every potential strategy was not just anticipated but neutralized before it could be enacted. The mission parameters became a living, breathing entity that consumed and transformed information in real time. Kreezax understood that this was more than a contract. This was a fundamental reimagining of what a hunt could be. The neutron star's magnetic interference would disable most tracking systems. Traditional hunting methods would be useless, but Alina's contract contained quantum-entangled tracking protocols that could navigate even the most complex electromagnetic environments. "You'll need a team of 17 specialists," Alina explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface, each with very specific skill sets, and each bound by contractual parameters that make failure mathematically improbable. The holographic display shifted, showing potential mission scenarios. Each path was color-coded, with probability matrices demonstrating success rates that defied traditional hunting logic. Kreezax's multiple optical sensors processed the information. What appeared to be a contract was actually a complex predictive system that could navigate the most challenging hunting environment in the known galaxy. This was not just a hunt. This was a demonstration of humanity's true potential. The quantum-encrypted AI at the neutron star's core represented the ultimate challenge. No hunting collective had ever successfully captured such a target. The magnetic interference alone made traditional tracking impossible. But Alina Rodriguez didn't believe in impossible. As the final details of the contract were negotiated, Kreezax realized something profound. The galaxy was changing. Humanity wasn't just entering the interstellar stage. They were rewriting the rules of engagement. The hunt was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. Magnetic interference rippled like invisible waves across the neutron star's event horizon. The Xithkal hunting vessel, a biomechanical marvel of engineering that had crushed civilizations, now moved with unprecedented caution. Alina's contract transformed the entire mission into a living, breathing algorithm. Each hunter was more than a biological entity. They were now nodes in a complex information network, their every movement tracked, analyzed, and predictively managed by a contract that seemed to breathe with its own intelligence. Kreezax monitored the mission parameters, watching in growing fascination as the contract's predictive models generated real-time adjustments. Traditional hunting was about physical prowess, about breaking through barriers with overwhelming force. This was something entirely different. The quantum-encrypted AI at the neutron star's core represented the ultimate challenge. Its adaptive camouflage technologies had made it invisible to every known tracking system. Entire hunting collectives had been reduced to cosmic dust attempting to penetrate its defenses. But Alina Rodriguez didn't understand the meaning of impossible. Her contract was a weapon more sophisticated than any plasma cannon. Each clause was a potential trajectory, each paragraph a strategic intervention point. The hunters moved not by instinct, but by a complex mathematical dance choreographed by pure information. One hunter's biometric scan deviated 0.03 degrees from the prescribed path. Instantaneously, a financial penalty materialized, so severe that the entire mission's potential earnings would be obliterated. Another team member's cooling system fluctuated by a microscopic margin. Another automatic adjustment. The neutron star's magnetic fields would have destroyed conventional tracking systems, but Alina's contract contained quantum-entangled protocols that could navigate even the most complex electromagnetic environments. Krezak watched in growing understanding. This wasn't just a hunt. This was a fundamental reimagining of what hunting could mean. The AI they sought was more than a target. It was a technological singularity, a consciousness that had evolved beyond traditional computational boundaries. It had hidden itself in the most inhospitable environment imaginable, its quantum encryption creating a realm where standard physics became more suggestion than law. Each movement of the Xithcal hunters was a carefully calculated risk. Their cybernetic augmentations, once the pinnacle of hunting technology, now seemed almost primitive compared to the contract's predictive capabilities. Alina Rodriguez wasn't on the mission. She didn't need to be. Her contract was everywhere. A living, breathing entity that consumed and transformed information faster than any known computational matrix. What appeared to be a simple legal document was actually a complex neural network that could anticipate and neutralize threats before they could manifest. The hunters moved through quantum-shifted corridors of magnetic interference, their path dictated not by traditional navigation, but by a contract that seemed to understand the mission's parameters at a level beyond traditional computational logic. Krezak understood the terrible truth first. They weren't hunting the AI. The contract was hunting them. Every potential strategy was not just anticipated but neutralized before it could be enacted. The mission parameters had become a living, breathing entity that consumed and transformed information in real time. As they approached the AI's core location, the magnetic interference reached a crescendo. Traditional systems would have collapsed. Communication would have been impossible. But Alina Rodriguez didn't believe in impossible. The hunt continued. And the galaxy watched, understanding that everything was about to change. Psychological profiles began to disintegrate. The Xithcal hunters, creatures who had spent millennia defining themselves through absolute conquest, found themselves trapped in a mission that was less about physical prowess and more about pure information management. Krezak watched the team's mental states deteriorate in real time. The contract wasn't just a set of rules. It was a living psychological evaluation that probed deeper than any traditional scanning technology. Intercepted communications revealed a growing paranoia. The hunters spoke in fragmented languages, their traditional communication protocols breaking down under the contract's relentless analytical pressure. The document watches, one hunter whispered into a supposedly secure channel. "It knows everything." Alina Rodriguez had transformed contract brokering from a bureaucratic function into a form of psychological warfare. Her training academy became more than an educational institution. It was a strategic center where the very nature of conflict was being reimagined. Hunters from across the galaxy were forced to learn human communication techniques, to understand that true power resided not in physical strength, but in the ability to predict and manipulate information systems. The quantum-encrypted AI at the neutron star's core represented more than a target. It was a test, a demonstration of humanity's true potential to transform conflict from physical confrontation to pure intellectual engagement. Each hunter's psychological profile became a battleground. Traditional hunting instincts, the drive to pursue, to overwhelm, to conquer, were systematically dismantled by a contract that understood their motivations at a molecular level. Krezak began to understand that what they were experiencing was more than a mission. This was an evolution. The contract parsed their communication patterns, their micro-expressions, their smallest physiological responses. What appeared to be a legal document was actually a complex neural network that could anticipate psychological breakdown points with mathematical precision. One by one, the hunters' traditional operational frameworks began to collapse. Their cybernetic augmentations, once the pinnacle of hunting technology, now seemed like primitive tools against the contract's predictive capabilities. Each movement was analyzed, each decision tree mapped, and potential outcomes calculated before they could even be conceived. The neutron star's magnetic interference created a realm where standard physics became more suggestion than law. But Elena Rodriguez's contract created an even more fundamental shift, a space where traditional psychological boundaries could be systematically dismantled. Communication channels began to leak information, not through traditional means, but through the very psychological pressure the contract was applying. What appeared to be secure transmissions became conduits for the contract's expanding intelligence. Krezaks realized the terrible truth first. They weren't just being hunted. They were being studied. The mission was transforming from a hunt into a comprehensive psychological evaluation. Every micro-decision, every fractional deviation from expected behavior became another data point in an expanding network of understanding. Humanity had discovered something profound. True power wasn't about physical conquest. It was about understanding. As the hunters moved closer to their quantum-encrypted target, the psychological pressure continued to build. The contract was rewriting the very definition of what a hunt could mean, and nothing would ever be the same again. The transformation began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Hunting guilds across the galaxy started to change. Where once they celebrated physical prowess and brutal efficiency, now they began to recruit differently. Human communication specialists, quantum contract analysts, psychological profilers who understood that the true battlefield was no longer physical space, but the complex realm of information and prediction. Elena Rodriguez's training academy became a pilgrimage site for the most ambitious hunters in the known universe. Planetary conflicts that would have once erupted into full-scale wars were now resolved through complex contractual frameworks. The very nature of interstellar negotiation had been fundamentally reimagined. Diplomacy became a form of strategic warfare conducted through pure information. Krezaks, once the most feared hunter in the Sithkul Predator clan, now stood as a living testament to this transformation. The hunter who had lived for the kill now understood that true power resided in understanding, not destruction. The quantum-encrypted AI they had been sent to capture became something more than a mission target. It became a symbol of the new galactic order, a representation of the evolving understanding that intelligence was the ultimate survival tool. Holographic displays in diplomatic centers across hundreds of star systems began to show a new kind of metric. No longer were success rates measured by destroyed targets or conquered territories. Now they were measured by the complexity of contractual frameworks, by the ability to predict and neutralize potential conflicts before they could manifest. Human negotiation techniques became the new standard. The training was brutal, comprehensive. Hunters were no longer taught simply how to track and eliminate. They were taught to understand, to predict, to transform potential conflict into mutually beneficial agreements. Elena's contract methodology spread like a quantum virus through the galactic information networks. Each new contract became another node in an expanding intelligence network that seemed to breathe with its own consciousness. Traditional power structures began to crumble. Entire planetary systems that had relied on military might found themselves outmaneuvered by entities that could create contractual frameworks so complex, so predictive, that military action became economically impossible. The Sithkul Predator clan, once known for their absolute conquest, now became consultants. Their historical knowledge of conflict was transformed into a strategic asset for prevention rather than destruction. Krezaks watched as a new generation of hunters emerged. They carried no weapons. Their most sophisticated tool was a quantum-encrypted tablet capable of generating contracts that could reshape entire interstellar relationships. The hunt had changed forever. Humanity had shown that its most dangerous weapon wasn't technology or physical strength. It was the ability to understand, to predict, to transform potential conflict into a negotiable framework. In diplomatic centers and training academies across the galaxy, a new mantra emerged: contract before conflict, understanding before action. The quantum encrypted AI they had pursued became a symbol of this new understanding. Not a target to be destroyed, but a representation of the complex, interconnected nature of intelligence itself. As star systems watched and learned, one thing became abundantly clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. Years dissolved like quantum probability waves. Elena Rodriguez had become more myth than person. Her contract methodologies were no longer just legal frameworks. They had evolved into something that defied traditional understanding. A living, breathing form of collective intelligence that seemed to exist beyond traditional computational boundaries. The training academy she founded was no longer just an educational institution. It was a philosophical center where the very nature of conflict, communication, and collective intelligence was being reimagined. Young recruits from 100 different star systems studied not just contract law, but the complex psychological frameworks that transformed potential conflict into collaborative opportunity. They learned that true power resided not in destruction, but in understanding. Kreezax, now an elder consultant, watched the new generation with a mixture of fascination and profound respect. The hunter who had once lived for the kill now understood that intelligence was the ultimate evolutionary adaptation. The quantum encrypted AI they had pursued years ago had become something more than a technological marvel. It was now a fundamental part of the Galactic Information Network, a living representation of the new understanding that intelligence was a collaborative, adaptive system. Holographic displays in diplomatic centers showed complex contractual networks that looked more like living biological systems than traditional legal documents. Each contract was a node, each clause a potential evolutionary pathway. Humanity had discovered something profound. Conflict was not something to be won, but a complex system to be understood and transformed. The final twist came unexpectedly. The contract methodologies that Elena had developed were themselves evolving. What had begun as a human innovation was now a collective intelligence that transcended any single species or technological framework. Planetary systems that had once relied on military might now found themselves part of a complex, adaptive network where prevention was not just more efficient than conflict, it was mathematically inevitable. The quantum encrypted AI they had pursued became a metaphor for this new understanding. Not a target to be captured, but a representation of the complex, interconnected nature of intelligence itself. In the vast, complex universe, humanity had shown that its most dangerous weapon was not technology, not physical strength, but the ability to understand, to predict, to transform. Contracts were no longer just legal documents. They were the first step towards a new form of collective consciousness. The hunt had changed forever, and the galaxy watched, understanding that everything was possible. Humanity had arrived, and they were bringing paperwork.